The crystal chandelier sparkled overhead as I adjusted my emerald dress. The one Nathan always said brought out my eyes. 7 years together, and tonight was supposed to be special. Our anniversary dinner at Bellissimo, the restaurant where he'd proposed on bended knee with a diamond that caught the light just like these chandeliers. I'd spent the afternoon at the salon, my caramel-colored hair now cascading in soft waves past my shoulders, exactly how he liked it. The maître d' led us to our usual corner table, the one with the view of the city skyline that Nathan had specifically requested when he made the reservation 3 weeks ago. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I should have known something was wrong when he ordered the most expensive bottle of champagne on the menu without even glancing at me. Nathan was never extravagant unless he was compensating for something. Like the time he bought me diamond earrings after working late for 3 weeks straight, or the weekend getaway to Napa after I found a long blonde hair on his jacket collar. But tonight was our anniversary. I pushed those thoughts away and smiled as he poured the bubbling liquid into my flute. To 7 years, I said, raising my glass. His smile didn't reach his eyes. To new beginnings, he replied. And that's when I knew. 7 years of marriage, and this is how it ends, with a manila envelope sliding across white linen, his manicured fingernails tapping nervously beside it. "What's this?" I asked, though the mixture of guilt and impatience in his expression already told me everything. "Sophia," he said, my name sounding foreign on his lips. "I think we both know this isn't working anymore." I stared at the envelope, not touching it, as the waiter arrived with our appetizers, seared scallops that suddenly looked like pale, dead things on the pristine plate. What Nathan didn't know, what no one knew except my most trusted confidant, was that I had an envelope of my own, and his was waiting in my purse for exactly the right moment. I met Nathan Hargrove during my final year of law school. I was buried in textbooks at a corner table of a coffee shop when he spilled his Americano dangerously close to my constitutional law notes. His apology came with a replacement coffee and a charm that made it impossible to hold a grudge. He was 31 to my 25, already established in his architecture firm, Hargrove Designs, with clients ranging from local businesses to emerging tech companies looking for innovative office spaces. "I design spaces for people to thrive in," he told me on our first date, eyes alight with genuine passion. "Every corner, every window, every material has purpose." I fell for his vision as much as I fell for him. After graduation, when I was offered a position at Finch & Blackwell, one of the most prestigious corporate law firms in the city, Nathan was my biggest supporter. "We'll be unstoppable," he said as we clinked glasses in celebration. "You'll help businesses build their legal foundations, and I'll build their physical ones." The first 2 years of our marriage flourished. Nathan's firm secured larger contracts, and I worked my way through the associate ranks at Finch & Blackwell. We bought a modern loft in the Arts District, one of Nathan's own designs, and talked about starting a family someday when our careers settled. The cracks began to form in year 3. Nathan started coming home later, his breath sometimes carrying the faint scent of perfume that wasn't mine. His phone would buzz at odd hours, and he'd take calls on the balcony, voice too low for me to hear. When I asked, there were always reasonable explanations: client meetings, site visits, networking events. I chose to believe him because the alternative was too painful to consider. Then came Rebecca Jensen. I remembered the first time Nathan mentioned her, casually, over breakfast. "We've landed the Jensen Group account," he said, scrolling through emails on his phone. "Rebecca Jensen is revolutionizing boutique hotels, and she wants Hargrove Designs to create her flagship property downtown." I looked up from my coffee. "That's wonderful, Nathan." "She's brilliant," he continued, a note of admiration in his voice that made something twist in my stomach. She started with one small hotel 5 years ago, and now she's building an empire. The Jensen Group is exactly the kind of visionary client we need. Over the next months, Rebecca's name became a constant in our home. Rebecca thinks the rooftop should be a garden retreat. Rebecca suggested a different material for the lobby. Rebecca invited me to the industry gala. Would I mind if he attended alone since I was preparing for that big case? I did mind, but I didn't say so. Instead, I threw myself into my work, taking on additional cases and staying at the office later than necessary. If Nathan noticed my absence, he didn't mention it. We began to orbit each other like distant planets, occupying the same space but rarely connecting. 6 months into the Jensen project, I came home early from work with a migraine to find shopping bags on our kitchen island. Expensive ones from boutiques I couldn't afford, even with my law firm salary. Inside was a gold bracelet with a small diamond charm. "Nathan," I called out, but the loft was empty. His calendar was open on his iPad, a rookie mistake for someone hiding an affair. Lunch with Rebecca, followed by shopping for Sophia's gift, blocked off for 2 hours. An anniversary gift, bought with Rebecca at his side. I set the bracelet back in its box and took 2 painkillers for my migraine. When Nathan came home, I pretended I hadn't seen the gift or his calendar. "Tough day at the site," he explained, loosening his tie. "The contractor is pushing back on Rebecca's vision for the atrium." I nodded sympathetically while scanning his face for signs of guilt. There were none. That night, lying awake beside my sleeping husband, I made a decision. I would not confront him. Not yet. First, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. The attorney in me knew better than to enter a battle without all the facts. The next morning, I called my longtime friend, and the only person I truly trusted with something this delicate, Mia Torres, a private investigator who had helped Finch and Blackwell with several corporate cases. "I need information," I told her over coffee at a cafe far from my office. Discreetly, Mia's dark eyes studied me. "Nathan?" I nodded, throat tight. "What do you want to know?" "Everything." Over the next 2 weeks, Mia compiled a dossier that confirmed my worst fears. Nathan had been seeing Rebecca Jensen for at least 4 months. Their meetings extended well beyond professional interactions. Dinners at intimate restaurants, weekend site visits to locations where they only spent a fraction of their time looking at architectural plans. There were photos of them entering a boutique hotel across town, Nathan's hand resting possessively on the small of her back. But the most devastating discovery wasn't the affair itself, it was what Nathan had done to facilitate it. "He's been transferring funds from your joint accounts to a separate one," Mia explained, sliding bank statements across the table. "Small amounts at first, then larger sums in the past 2 months. I stared at the numbers. Almost $100,000. "There's more," Mia continued, hesitation in her voice. "The Jensen Group has been struggling financially. Their last 2 hotel projects went significantly over budget, and they've had trouble securing additional funding. According to my sources, several investors pulled out 3 months ago. And yet Nathan took them on as a client," I murmured, pieces clicking together. "He's investing in her company, isn't he?" Mia nodded. "It looks that way, and he's using your marital assets to do it." The betrayal cut deep, but the lawyer in me immediately recognized the legal implications. Nathan had fiduciary responsibilities to me as his spouse. Using joint funds to invest in his lover's business without my knowledge or consent was more than infidelity. It was financial misconduct. "I need you to keep tracking the money," I told Mia, "and I need to know more about the Jensen Group's financial situation." As Mia continued her investigation, I began planning. During the day, I was still Sophia Hargrove, dedicated associate at Finch and Blackwell, working on corporate mergers and acquisitions. But evenings and weekends became dedicated to building my case. I reviewed our prenuptial agreement, identified our marital assets, and discreetly consulted with Marie Chen, a colleague who specialized in family law. Given these financial transfers and the documented affair, you're in a strong position, Marie advised. The prenup has infidelity and financial misconduct clauses that work in your favor, but timing will be crucial. What do you mean? If you confront him too soon, he might hide more assets or create a narrative that paints you as the problem. You need leverage, something that gives you the upper hand when everything comes to light. That night, as Nathan texted someone, Rebecca, undoubtedly, while we watched a movie in silence, an idea began to form. Marie was right about leverage, but I needed something more significant than just documentation of his affair and financial indiscretions. I needed to understand exactly what Nathan was investing in and why it mattered so much to him. The next day, I asked Bennett McAllister, a senior partner at Finch & Blackwell who had become something of a mentor, for a private meeting. I need to consult on a delicate matter, I began once his office door was closed. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. It involves a potential conflict of interest. Bennett's bushy eyebrows rose. Go on. It's come to my attention that my husband's architecture firm is working with a hotel development company called the Jensen Group. I believe he's also personally investing in their projects. And the conflict? I've learned the Jensen Group is financially unstable, and I'm concerned about potential legal issues if they default on obligations or misrepresent their financial health to contractors, including my husband's firm. Bennett leaned back, studying me. I knew he saw through my explanation to the personal concerns underneath, but he respected me enough not to pry. The Jensen Group, he mused. Interesting timing. Prescott Development has been looking at distressed hotel properties for acquisition. They've mentioned a portfolio that sounds remarkably similar. My heart raced. Prescott Development was one of our biggest clients, a real estate investment firm known for identifying struggling properties with potential, acquiring them at favorable prices, and transforming them into profitable ventures. Would you like me to make some inquiries? Bennett offered. Discreetly, of course. I would appreciate that. 2 days later, Bennett called me into his office again. Sophia, I think you should be lead counsel on Prescott's newest acquisition target. They're preparing to make a move on the Jensen Group's properties. The timing is sensitive, and they need someone who understands the urgency. I kept my expression neutral, despite the surge of adrenaline. Why me? Because you're thorough, discreet, and you've demonstrated exceptional insight on their previous acquisitions. He slid a folder across his desk. And because I suspect this matter is of personal interest to you. I accepted the folder, a silent understanding passing between us. Thank you, Bennett. Just remember, whatever personal satisfaction you might derive from this situation, your professional obligation is to Prescott Development. Their interests come first. Absolutely. The folder contained preliminary due diligence on the Jensen Group. What I read confirmed Mia's findings and revealed even more troubling details. Rebecca Jensen had been misrepresenting her company's financial health to investors. 2 of her properties were on the verge of foreclosure, and she had leveraged her flagship hotel project, the one Nathan was designing, well beyond its potential value. Most critically, Prescott Development had already secured commitments from the Jensen Group's primary lenders to acquire their debt. They were positioning themselves for a hostile takeover, and no one at the Jensen Group knew it was coming, including Nathan. I spent the next 3 weeks living a double life. By day, I meticulously prepared Prescott's acquisition strategy for the Jensen Group, identifying vulnerabilities, structuring the offer to minimize legal challenges, and creating a timeline that would leave Rebecca Jensen with virtually no time to secure alternative financing once Prescott made their move. By night, I returned home to Nathan, who grew increasingly distracted and distant. He worked late most evenings, and when he was home, his attention remained fixed on his phone or architectural plans spread across our dining table. "The Jensen project is at a critical stage," he explained when I asked about his absences. "Rebecca needs everything perfect for the investor presentation next month. This could be the project that takes Hargrove Designs to the next level." I nodded sympathetically while thinking about the documents in my briefcase that would ensure that presentation never happened. Mia's continued investigation revealed that Nathan had now invested nearly $200,000 of our joint funds into the Jensen Group. He had also begun looking at real estate listings for luxury condos, all in his name only. He was planning his exit strategy, not just from our marriage, but from our shared financial life. Our 7th anniversary approached, and to my surprise, Nathan suggested we celebrate at Bellissimo. "We should mark the occasion properly," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "I'll make reservations for the 15th. I agreed, suspicion immediately flaring. The 15th was still 2 weeks away, plenty of time for him to prepare whatever he was planning, and I had no doubt he was planning something. The timing aligned too perfectly with Prescott Development's timeline for the Jensen Group acquisition. "That sounds lovely," I said, already knowing that Prescott would be executing their takeover bid on the 16th, the day after our anniversary dinner. The pieces fell into place over the next week. Nathan opened a new checking account in his name, only. He updated his will without telling me. He had 3 lengthy phone calls with his personal attorney. And he purchased a one-way plane ticket to San Francisco for the 16th, where Rebecca Jensen happened to be scouting locations for her next hotel. The night before our anniversary dinner, I sat alone in my office at Finch & Blackwell, finalizing the Prescott acquisition documents. Everything was prepared for filing first thing on the 16th. The Jensen Group would be notified of the debt acquisition and hostile takeover bid simultaneously, leaving them scrambling without recourse. I also prepared one additional document, ownership, transfer papers for Hargrove Designs. Our prenuptial agreement had a specific clause that Nathan himself had insisted on. In case of proven infidelity, business assets acquired during the marriage would be subject to equal division. With Nathan's financial misconduct documented, I had leverage to demand full transfer rather than just half. I placed both sets of documents in identical manila envelopes and went home to prepare for our anniversary dinner. The evening of the 15th arrived. I dressed with particular care. The emerald dress Nathan had always loved, hair styled to perfection, makeup subtle but flawless. The maitre d' at Bellissimo greeted us warmly, leading us to our usual corner table overlooking the city. Nathan ordered champagne immediately, his fingers drumming nervously on the white tablecloth. We made small talk about work while avoiding anything meaningful. Nathan checked his watch repeatedly, his attention clearly elsewhere. When the appetizers arrived, he finally reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a manila envelope. "Sophia," he said, sliding it across the table. "I think we both know this isn't working anymore." I looked at the envelope without touching it. "What's this, Nathan?" "Divorce papers," he said, his voice steady but his eyes darting to the exits as if planning an escape route. "I've been unhappy for a while now. We've grown apart. I think it's best if we make a clean break." I nodded slowly, still not reaching, for the envelope. "And what exactly does a clean break look like in your mind?" He straightened slightly, clearly relieved I wasn't making a scene. "I'm proposing an equitable split of our personal assets. You keep the loft, since my name isn't on the deed. I'll take the vacation property in Lake Tahoe and my business assets." "Your business assets?" I repeated. "You mean Hargrove Designs?" "Of course. The firm was mine before we married." "But it grew substantially during our marriage," I pointed out. "With my support, both emotional and financial." Nathan's expression hardened slightly. "The prenup is clear on business assets acquired before marriage, and equally clear on the implications of infidelity," I added calmly. His face paled. What are you talking about? I reached for my purse, removing my own manila envelope and placing it beside his. Before I sign anything, I think we should discuss Rebecca Jensen. Shock flickered across Nathan's face before he composed himself, his jaw tightening as he leaned back in his chair. The chandelier light caught the sheen of perspiration forming on his forehead. Rebecca is a client, he said smoothly. An important client. If you've been checking my calendar or my phone, I haven't needed to, I replied, taking a sip of the expensive champagne he'd ordered. You've been remarkably careless for someone planning to leave his wife. Nathan's eyes darted to my envelope. What exactly are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. I set my glass down carefully. Fact 1. You've been having an affair with Rebecca Jensen for at least 4 months. Fact 2. You've diverted nearly $200,000 from our joint accounts to invest in her financially troubled hotel ventures. Fact 3. You've purchased a one-way ticket to San Francisco for tomorrow, where Rebecca happens to be scouting locations. With each statement, Nathan's carefully constructed composure cracked further. His fingers gripped the edge of the eye. Table, knuckles whitening. You've been spying on me? I prefer to call it due diligence, I replied. Something you should understand, given how much emphasis you placed on our prenuptial agreement. A flash of anger replaced his shock. Whatever you think you know about Rebecca's business, I know exactly what there is to know about the Jensen Group's financial situation, I interrupted calmly. They're over-leveraged on their existing properties. Their last 2 projects exceeded budgets by more than 40%. Their primary lenders are getting nervous, and they've been rejected by 3 potential investors in the past 6 months. I paused, watching realization dawn on his face. Did Rebecca tell you any of this before she accepted your investment? Nathan's silence was answer enough. I assumed not, I continued. She needed capital quickly, and you were conveniently available with access to our joint funds and stars in your eyes about the incredible opportunity she presented, both professionally and personally. The waiter approached with our entrees, and we both fell silent as he arranged the plates with practiced efficiency. Is everything to your satisfaction? He asked. Perfect, thank you, I replied with a practiced smile. Once he departed, Nathan leaned forward, voice lowered. This is a gross invasion of privacy. You had no right to investigate my client relationships. Interestingly, that's your primary concern, not the fact that I've discovered your affair or your misappropriation of our marital assets. I cut into my steak, the knife slicing through with satisfying precision. Tell me, exactly when did you decide our marriage was over? Before or after you met Rebecca? Nathan's gaze hardened. We've been growing apart for years, Sophia. You know that. We barely talk anymore. You're always at the office. And you're always with Rebecca, I finished. Though I notice you managed to fit me into your schedule for an anniversary dinner. Was that guilt? Or did you just need a convenient time to deliver those? I nodded toward his envelope. I thought you deserved the courtesy of doing this face-to-face. I nearly laughed at that. How considerate. Although I noticed the divorce, papers are already drawn up. You didn't think I might want to negotiate terms? The terms are fair, he insisted. More than fair. You keep the loft. Which I paid for, I reminded him. My name is on the deed because I made the down payment from my premarital savings and have been making the mortgage payments from my separate account for 7 years. This had been one of our early compromises. Nathan wanted to live in one of his own architectural creations, but we couldn't afford it on his fledgling firm's income alone. My salary as an associate had made it possible. Fine, but I'm not asking for any part of it, he said, as if he were being magnanimous. You also keep your retirement accounts, your personal vehicles, and your inheritance from your grandmother. All separate property clearly defined as mine in the prenup. I noted. You're not offering concessions, Nathan. You're simply not challenging what you legally can't claim. Frustration flashed across his face. What do you want, Sophia? To drag this out and make us both miserable? To embarrass us both with accusations? And counter-accusations? I took another bite of my steak, chewing thoughtfully before responding. What I want is for you to understand exactly what you're walking away from, and what you're walking into. Meaning? I slid my envelope closer to him. Open it. Nathan hesitated, then picked up the envelope, tearing it open with barely controlled agitation. He pulled out the contents, his expression shifting from anger to confusion as he scanned. The first page. "What is this?" he asked, flipping to the second page. "Ownership transfer papers for Hargrove Designs," I replied, transferring controlling interest to me. He looked up sharply. "This is ridiculous. I'm not signing this." "Actually, you are," I said calmly. "Unless you'd prefer I file charges for financial fraud and misappropriation of marital assets. The prenup you were so eager to have me sign includes a morality clause that you've clearly violated. Section 4.3 specifically states that in case of infidelity with financial impropriety, business assets acquired or substantially grown during the marriage become subject to equitable distribution." "Hargrove Designs existed before we met," he countered. "True, but it was a small operation with 3 employees and annual revenue under $200,000. Now you have 27 employees and revenue of $4.6 million last year. That growth occurred during our marriage, with my financial support enabling you to take risks and expand. That makes the increased value marital property subject to division." Nathan's face flushed with anger. "No judge would give you my entire company." "They might not," I conceded. "But they would certainly give me half. And then we'd be business partners, Nathan, forever linked through Hargrove Designs. Every major decision requiring both our signatures. Every profit distribution needing mutual agreement." I leaned forward. "Is that what you want? To remain tethered to me while you attempt to build a new life with Rebecca?" His silence answered my question. "I thought not," I continued. "My proposal is simple. You sign over controlling interest in Hargrove Designs to me, and in exchange, I don't contest the divorce or publicize your affair. You walk away with your personal assets, a minority interest in the firm that will continue to generate income, for you and your professional reputation intact." Nathan stared at me in disbelief. "This is extortion." "This is negotiation," I corrected. "Something you clearly intended to bypass by presenting me with completed divorce papers at a public restaurant, assuming I would be too shocked or embarrassed to object. And what happens to Hargrove Designs if I agree to this insanity?" he demanded. "You're a lawyer, not an architect. You know nothing about running a design firm." "I know about contracts, client relationships, and profitability," I countered. "I also know that your creative vision matters little if the business infrastructure isn't sound. For 7 years, I've watched you prioritize aesthetics over practicalities. I've balanced our household budget while you pursued prestige projects with minimal profit margins. I think I can manage." Nathan's jaw worked silently as he processed my words. Then a new calculation seemed to form behind his eyes. "You know what? Keep the paperwork. I'm not signing anything tonight." He pushed back from the table slightly. "I need to consult my attorney. These kinds of decisions shouldn't be made in the heat of the moment." I had anticipated this reaction. "Of course. Take all the time you need to review the documents with your counsel. But you should know that the Jensen Group will no longer be a factor in your decision-making process by this time tomorrow." His brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" "Prescott Development is acquiring the Jensen Group's debt from their primary lenders first thing tomorrow morning. By noon, they'll have executed a hostile takeover assuming control of all Jensen properties, including the flagship hotel you've been designing. The project will almost certainly be completely redesigned under new ownership." The color drained from Nathan's face. "That's not possible. Rebecca secured additional financing last month." "She attempted to," I corrected. "The term sheet was never executed. Her investors pulled out after conducting proper due diligence, something you failed to do before investing our money." "How do you know all this?" he demanded, voice rising enough that a couple at a nearby table glanced over curiously. I took another sip of champagne, letting the moment stretch before answering. "Because I'm leading the legal team handling Prescott Development's acquisition of the Jensen Group." Nathan stared at me, comprehension finally dawning. "You're behind this takeover." "I'm representing Prescott's interests as their counsel," I clarified. "Their interest in distressed hotel properties predates my involvement. But yes, when I learned about the Jensen Group's vulnerabilities, I brought the opportunity to their attention and volunteered to handle the transaction." I set my glass down. "A transaction that will effectively render your investment in the Jensen Group worthless and eliminate Rebecca's company entirely." Nathan's hands trembled slightly as he reached for his water glass. "You've orchestrated this entire situation." "No, Nathan. You orchestrated this situation when you began sleeping with a client, investing our joint funds without my knowledge, and planning to leave our marriage. I'm simply ensuring that I'm not left holding the bag for your poor decisions." His shock transformed into cold anger. "You won't get away with this." "I already have," I replied evenly. "Even if you called Rebecca right now to warn her, there's nothing she could do. The paperwork is prepared, the lenders have agreed to the debt purchase, and Prescott's offer is ready to file at 9 a.m. tomorrow. The Jensen Group will be notified simultaneously, giving them no time to secure alternative financing." Nathan reached for his phone. "I need to call her." "By all means," I said, gesturing toward the exit. "Though I suggest stepping outside. This isn't a conversation you want overheard." He stood abruptly, napkin falling to the floor as he strode toward the restaurant entrance, phone already at his ear. The maitre d' gave him a concerned look as he pushed through the door. I took the opportunity to signal our waiter. "Could we have the check, please? And could you box the entrees? I don't think we'll be finishing dinner." "Of course, ma'am. Is everything all right?" "Just a minor disagreement," I assured him with a practiced smile. "Business matters." As the waiter departed, I noticed Nathan through the window, pacing on the sidewalk, gesturing emphatically as he spoke into his phone. His expression shifted from anger to disbelief, to something approaching panic. After several minutes, he ended the call and stood motionless, staring at nothing, before slowly turning back toward the restaurant. The waiter returned with boxed food and the check. I provided my credit card before Nathan could return to the table. "Please add 20% gratuity," I told him, "and thank you for your excellent service despite our abbreviated evening." Nathan slid back into his chair, looking shell-shocked. "Rebecca says her primary lender called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. They wouldn't tell her why." "As is their prerogative," I noted, signing the credit card receipt. "The Jensen flagship project is my best work," he said quietly. 2 years of planning, hundreds of hours of design work. If Prescott scraps it, they almost certainly will, I confirmed. Their business model focuses on streamlined, efficient properties with quick return on investment. Your design, while undoubtedly beautiful, is too costly to implement as conceived." Nathan ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, disrupting it in a way I hadn't seen since the early days of our relationship. "You've destroyed 2 years of my professional work out of spite." "No, Nathan. I've represented my client's interests professionally while protecting my own interests personally. The impact on your work is an unfortunate consequence of your poor choice in business partners." I gathered my purse and the box containing my uneaten dinner. "Now, shall we discuss those ownership transfer papers?" Or would you prefer I proceed with a contested divorce, citing your documented infidelity and financial misconduct? He stared at the envelope containing the transfer documents. I need time to think. You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow, I said, standing. After that, the Jensen Group situation becomes public, and the optics of your involvement become considerably more complicated. Your choice is simple. Sign the transfer and walk away with your personal assets and professional reputation intact, or fight me in court while simultaneously being associated with a failed investment in your lover's collapsing company. I placed my business card on the table next to the envelope. My direct line is on the back. Call me when you've made your decision. I walked out of Bellissimo with my head high, feeling the weight of 7 years lifting from my shoulders with each step. In the morning, regardless of Nathan's decision, I would execute the Prescott transaction and close this chapter of my life. The next morning, I arrived at my office at 7:30 a.m., giving myself ample time to prepare for the 9 a.m. filing. Bennett McAllister was already there, reviewing the final documentation for the Prescott Development acquisition. "Everything in order?" he asked as I set my briefcase on my desk. "Perfect," I confirmed. "The debt purchase agreements are ready. The takeover bid is prepared, and the notifications to the Jensen Group and its subsidiaries are queued for simultaneous delivery." Bennett nodded approvingly. "Prescott's CEO called me last night. He's extremely pleased with your handling of this transaction. There's talk of moving you to primary counsel for all their acquisitions going forward." "I'd welcome that," I replied, booting up my computer. "And your personal situation?" Bennett asked carefully. "Has that been resolved satisfactorily?" I appreciated that he didn't directly reference Nathan or our marriage. Bennett had always maintained professional boundaries while still showing genuine concern for my well-being. "It's progressing as expected," I told him. "I should have resolution by the end of the day." "Good," he said, standing to leave. "You deserve better, Sophia, both professionally and personally." "Thank you, Bennett." As he departed, my phone rang. Nathan's name appeared on the screen. It was 7:45 a.m. "Good morning, Nathan," I answered, keeping my voice neutral. "I've reviewed the transfer documents with my attorney," he said without preamble. His voice sounded tired, as if he hadn't slept. "He advises against signing." "That's his job," I replied. "What have you decided?" A long pause followed. "If I sign, what guarantee do I have that you won't pursue further claims against me?" "The transfer agreement includes a mutual release clause. Page 4, Section 6. Once executed, neither of us can pursue additional claims related to our marital assets or the events leading to our divorce." "And my position at Hargrove Designs?" "You remain employed as chief design architect with a guaranteed 3-year contract at your current salary, plus participation in profits proportional to your remaining 20% ownership stake. Your creative control over projects remains intact, but major business decisions require my approval as majority owner." Another pause. "Rebecca says the Jensen Group can find alternative financing if given time." "Perhaps," I conceded. "But not before Prescott's acquisition is complete. The Jensen Group as it currently exists will cease to exist by close of business today." Nathan sighed heavily. "This feels like I'm being forced to choose between my company and my relationship." "You already made that choice, Nathan, when you decided to invest our joint funds in Rebecca's business without my knowledge or consent. When you prepared divorce papers without attempting to negotiate terms. I'm simply ensuring the consequences of your choices don't fall entirely on me." "I'll sign," he said finally. "But I want the signing to happen with both our attorneys present." "Reasonable," I agreed. "My office at 8:30? Fine." The meeting was brief and clinical. Nathan arrived with his attorney, a silver-haired man named Harrison Powell, who had handled his business matters for years. My colleague Marie Chen joined us, reviewing the documents one final time before Nathan signed. "This agreement is extremely favorable to Ms. Hargrove," Powell noted with obvious disapproval. The alternative would be worse for everyone, Marie replied smoothly. A contested divorce with public allegations of infidelity and financial misconduct would damage Hargrove Design's brand significantly. This arrangement preserves the company's value while allowing both parties to move forward. Nathan signed without further comment, his signature a sharp, angry scrawl across the designated lines. When he finished, he stood abruptly. Is that everything? Just one more item, I said, reaching into my briefcase. I removed a sealed envelope and handed it to him. Your divorce papers, signed and notarized. Once filed, our marriage will be dissolved within 90 days. The terms match what we've agreed to in the transfer documents. Nathan took the envelope, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. You already signed them? I saw no reason to delay the inevitable, I replied. We both want to move forward, just not in the direction you originally planned. His attorney placed a hand on Nathan's shoulder. We should go. We have other matters to attend to this morning. As they turned to leave, Nathan paused at the door. Was any of it real, Sophia? These past 7 years? I met his gaze steadily. Everything I gave to our marriage was genuine, Nathan, including my trust, which you betrayed. I hope your next relationship is built on something more substantial than professional opportunity and hotel designs. After they departed, Marie gathered the signed documents. Congratulations, Sophia. As of this moment, you are the majority owner of Hargrove Designs, soon to be divorced, and about to execute a major acquisition for Prescott Development. Not bad for a morning's work. Thank you for your help with this, Marie. Don't mention it. Though I have to say, your husband didn't see this coming at all, did he? Ex-husband, I corrected. And no, Nathan never really saw me clearly. Not who I really was, not what I was capable of. That was his fundamental mistake. At precisely 9 a.m., I filed the Prescott Development paperwork electronically. Within minutes, notifications were automatically sent to the Jensen Group's executives, including Rebecca. By 9:15, my phone was ringing again. Not Nathan this time, but Mia Torres. It's done? She asked when I answered. It's done, I confirmed. Prescott has acquired the Jensen Group's debt and filed their takeover bid. The Jensen Group has been notified. And Nathan? He signed the transfer documents. I now own 80% of Hargrove Designs. Mia's low whistle came through the line. Remind me never to cross you, Sophia Hargrove. I prefer to think of it as justice rather than revenge, I told her. Nathan made business decisions that jeopardized our joint financial future. I've simply corrected those errors. And protected your interests in the process, Mia added. Brilliantly, I might add. Years of corporate law will teach you to anticipate potential threats and neutralize them before they materialize, I said. Nathan should have remembered what I do for a living before he decided to use our joint funds to invest in his girlfriend's failing business. What happens now? Mia asked. Now I focus on integrating Hargrove Designs into my life while maintaining appropriate professional boundaries with Nathan. He remains valuable to the firm as a talented architect. His personal decisions don't negate his professional skills. That's remarkably measured of you. It's practical, I corrected. Hargrove Designs has value because of Nathan's creative vision combined with strong client relationships. Removing him entirely would damage the business I now own. This arrangement ensures the company thrives while protecting my financial interests. After ending the call with Mia, I turned my attention back to the Prescott acquisition. As expected, the Jensen Group's management was in chaos following the notification. My phone rang repeatedly with calls from their legal team, attempting to negotiate an extension or alternative arrangement. As instructed by Prescott, I politely but firmly reiterated the terms of the takeover bid, offering no concessions. By noon, news of the acquisition had reached financial news outlets. Headlines announced, Prescott Development executes surprise. Takeover of struggling Jensen Hotel Group and Jensen flagship project halted as new ownership reviews designs. I received a text message from an unknown number at 2 p.m. You've destroyed everything I've worked for. This isn't over. Rebecca. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Rebecca Jensen's professional failures predated my involvement, and her decision to pursue a relationship with my husband had merely accelerated the inevitable collapse of her over-leveraged company. At 4:30 p.m., Bennett stopped by my office. Prescott's CEO is ecstatic. The Jensen acquisition went even more smoothly than anticipated. Their board voted to accept the takeover bid rather than fight it in court. Smart move on their part. They recognized they had no viable alternatives, I noted. Bennett nodded. He's asked that you personally oversee the transition team. There's a significant bonus attached to the assignment. I'd be happy to. Excellent. Bennett paused, studying me with a paternal expression that he rarely displayed in the office. And Hargrove Designs? I heard through the grapevine that ownership has changed hands. News traveled fast in our professional circles. Yes, I've acquired majority interest. Nathan will remain as chief design architect. Interesting arrangement, Bennett observed. Most divorcing couples prefer clean breaks. This was the most financially advantageous solution for all parties, I replied simply. Bennett smiled, slightly. You always were one of my most pragmatic associates. That's why I recommended you for partner consideration at next month's board meeting. My breath caught. Partner? Your work on the Prescott acquisition alone would justify the promotion. Add in your consistent performance over the past 5 years, and it's an easy decision. He headed toward the door. Congratulations, Sophia, on all fronts. After Bennett left, I sat at my desk, processing everything that had transpired in the past 24 hours. I had entered my anniversary dinner as a woman about to be blindsided by divorce papers. I was ending the day as the majority owner of a successful architecture firm, the soon-to-be ex-wife of a man who had underestimated me catastrophically, and a lawyer on the verge of making partner at one of the city's most prestigious firms. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. The Jensen flagship project was canceled today. 2 years of work gone. I hope you're satisfied. I considered not responding, but decided clarity was important for our ongoing professional relationship. The project's cancellation was a business decision by Prescott Development based on financial projections. Your design work remains impressive and will attract new clients to Hargrove Designs. I suggest focusing on our firm's future rather than Rebecca Jensen's past. No response came. I hadn't expected one. As I gathered my things to leave the office, I reflected on the lessons Nathan had never learned during our marriage. He had seen what he wanted to see, a supportive wife whose career was secondary to his ambitions. He had failed to recognize that the same analytical mind and strategic thinking that made me an excellent corporate attorney could be turned toward personal matters when necessary. His fundamental error wasn't the affair with Rebecca Jensen, though that betrayal had been painful. It wasn't even the misappropriation of our joint funds, though that had crossed both moral and legal lines. His greatest mistake was assuming I would accept the terms he dictated, that I would sign the divorce papers he presented without question, and that I would watch passively as he dismantled the life we had built together. Nathan had always been fond of saying that architecture was about seeing possibilities where others saw only empty space. He should have applied that philosophy to understanding his wife before he decided to leave divorce papers at our anniversary dinner. Because while he had been planning his exit, I had been preparing my response, not out of vengeance, but out of self-preservation. And in the process, I had architected a future that he hadn't imagined possible. One where I emerged stronger, more successful, and in control of the company he had built. The divorce papers he had so confidently presented were now being filed on my terms. The ownership transfer papers he had reluctantly signed had secured my financial future. and the anniversary dinner he had intended as the end of our story had instead become the beginning of my own. 6 months passed with remarkable swiftness. Spring blossomed into summer, and summer faded into a crisp autumn. The leaves in the park across from my office turned brilliant shades of gold and crimson, a fitting backdrop for the transformation occurring in my professional and personal life. The Jensen Group acquisition had proven even more profitable for Prescott Development than initially projected. After restructuring the debt and implementing streamlined operations, they had managed to salvage 3 of the 5 hotel properties while selling off the remaining 2 at a substantial profit. I had overseen the entire process, earning not only the promised bonus, but also securing Prescott as an exclusive client for Finch and Blackwell, with me as their primary counsel. My partnership at the firm had been finalized in August. My name, now etched on the letterhead, and my office relocated to the corner suite with panoramic views of the city skyline. Bennett had personally hosted a celebration dinner, raising a toast to what he called the most strategic mind in corporate law. Hargrove Designs had weathered the transition in ownership with surprising resilience. After an initial period of tension and adjustment, a new equilibrium had emerged. Nathan maintained his role as chief design architect, focusing exclusively on creative work while I handled the business operations through a management team I had carefully assembled. We communicated primarily through email and scheduled meetings, maintaining professional distance that served us both. The divorce had been finalized without fanfare or further conflict, the terms exactly as outlined in our agreement. Nathan had moved into a downtown loft, notably not designed by him, while I remained in our original home. We had become that rare divorced couple who managed to work together effectively without animosity, though certainly without warmth. As for Rebecca Jensen, she had relocated to Chicago after the collapse of her company, reportedly working for a mid-sized hotel management firm in a significantly reduced capacity. Nathan never mentioned her name, and I never asked if they had maintained their relationship. Some questions were better left unasked. On a particularly vibrant October afternoon, I sat in my office reviewing quarterly reports for Hargrove Designs. The firm was thriving under the new management structure, with profits up 23% and employee satisfaction scores at an all-time high. Nathan's creative work remained exceptional, perhaps even improving without the distraction of administrative responsibilities. His latest design for a performing arts center had won a prestigious industry award, bringing positive attention to the firm. My assistant Julia knocked lightly before entering with a sleek portfolio. The preliminary designs for the Westbrook Foundation headquarters just arrived from Hargrove Designs, she announced, placing the portfolio on my desk. Nathan Hargrove included a note saying he'd like your feedback before tomorrow's presentation. To the client. Thank you, Julia, I replied, opening the portfolio. Inside were exquisite renderings of a building that somehow managed to be both boldly innovative and perfectly harmonious with its surroundings. Nathan had always possessed this gift, seeing possibilities in space that others couldn't imagine. The accompanying notes detailed sustainability features and community integration elements that aligned perfectly with the Westbrook Foundation's mission. Attached to the front page was a handwritten note. Sophia, I believe this is our best work yet. Your strategic direction for this project pushed my creativity in new ways. I'd appreciate your thoughts before we finalize. Nathan. I studied the note, surprised by the collaborative tone. Our best work. It was the first time since the ownership transfer that Nathan had acknowledged our shared stake in Hargrove Design's success. Something had shifted in his perspective, though I couldn't pinpoint exactly what. My phone rang, pulling me from these thoughts. It was Mia Torres. Tell me you're free for dinner tonight, she said without preamble. I have news that requires expensive wine and uninterrupted conversation. I smiled, glancing at my calendar. I can move some things around. Luca's at 7? Perfect. Wear something fabulous. This is a celebration. After disconnecting, I returned to the Westbrook Foundation designs, making careful notes on both the creative elements and business considerations. Nathan had indeed produced exceptional work, but there were strategic adjustments that could strengthen our position. With this prestigious client, I drafted a detailed email with my suggestions, maintaining the professional tone we'd established in our post-divorce interactions. After a moment's hesitation, I added a final paragraph. The design concept is brilliant, Nathan. The integration of natural light with the Foundation's collaborative work areas shows remarkable insight into their organizational culture. This could be a signature project for Hargrove Designs. His response came less than 30 minutes later. Thanks for the quick feedback. I've incorporated your suggestions into the final presentation. They strengthen the overall proposal considerably. Regarding the signature project potential, I agree completely. This could define our firm's evolution into this new chapter. Our new chapter. An interesting choice of words. At 7 precisely, I arrived at Luca's, an upscale Italian restaurant that had become a favorite meeting spot for Mia and me. She was already seated at our usual corner table, a bottle of Barolo breathing beside her. You're practically glowing, I observed as I took my seat. This must be significant news. Mia grinned, pouring generous glasses of wine for us both. Remember that corporate espionage case I've been working on for BioNexus Pharmaceuticals? The one with the suspected insider leaking research data to competitors? That's the one. She lifted her glass. Case closed. The executive VP of research was selling proprietary formulas through an elaborate network of shell companies. I tracked the money through 5 countries and 3 continents. Impressive, I said, clinking my glass against hers. No wonder you're celebrating. That's not even the best part, Mia continued, leaning forward. BioNexus was so pleased with my work that they've offered me a permanent position heading their new corporate security division. Triple my current salary, stock options, and a team of 12 reporting to me. Mia, that's wonderful. Are you taking it? She nodded, dark eyes sparkling. I signed the contract this morning. I start next month. This definitely calls for celebration, I agreed, signaling the waiter to bring another bottle. I'm so happy for you. I couldn't have done it without your referral, she reminded me. You recommended me to BioNexus when they first suspected the data breach. I merely made an introduction. You did the impressive work. As we ordered dinner, Mia studied me with the perceptive gaze that made her such an effective investigator. Now it's your turn. Something's changed. You seem lighter somehow. I considered deflecting, but Mia knew me too well. Hargrove Designs is thriving, I admitted. The restructuring has been more successful than I anticipated. And Nathan? She probed gently. Professional. Focused. He seems to have accepted the new reality and is channeling his energy into creative work rather than resentment. I sipped my wine. It's actually been good for the firm. Good for the firm or good for you? I raised an eyebrow. They're not mutually exclusive. As majority owner, the firm's success directly benefits me. That's not what I meant, and you know it. Our first courses arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. After the waiter departed, Mia continued. You've spent the past 6 months rebuilding your professional life with remarkable success. But what about your personal life? What about it? Sophia, she said with exaggerated patience. When was the last time you went on a date? I set down my fork. I've been slightly preoccupied becoming a partner, running a design firm, and finalizing a divorce. Exactly. And now all 3 of those things are settled. It's been 6 months since... Nathan left that envelope on your anniversary dinner table. Don't you think it's time to start considering what comes next? Her question struck a nerve I hadn't realized was exposed. In the whirlwind of professional advancement and corporate strategy, I had deliberately avoided contemplating my personal future beyond the dissolution of my marriage. I haven't given it much thought, I said finally. Dating seems Complicated at this point. Of course it's complicated, Mia agreed. Everything worthwhile is. But you deserve more than corporate acquisitions and design firm management, brilliant as you are at both. Before I could respond, a familiar voice intruded from nearby. Sophia, I thought that was you. I turned to find Daniel Westbrook standing beside our table, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that suggested he'd come directly from a business meeting. As the head of the Westbrook Foundation and heir to the Westbrook publishing fortune, Daniel was both a significant potential client for Hargrove Designs and an influential figure in the city's business community. Daniel, I said, rising to shake his hand. What a pleasant surprise. May I introduce my friend, Mia Torres. Mia, this is Daniel Westbrook of the Westbrook Foundation. Pleased to meet you, Daniel said, shaking Mia's hand before turning back to me. I hope I'm not interrupting, but I wanted to tell you how impressed we are with the preliminary designs for our headquarters. The Foundation Board reviewed them this afternoon. I'm glad to hear that, I replied. Nathan has done exceptional work on the concept. Yes, his design vision is remarkable, but honestly, it was your strategic brief that really sold the board. The way you articulated how the building could embody our mission while remaining practical and sustainable, that's what convinced our more skeptical members. I felt a flush of pleasure at the recognition. Thank you. We're very excited about tomorrow's formal presentation. As am I. Daniel hesitated slightly. Actually, I was wondering if you might be available for lunch next week to discuss some additional ideas I have for the community engagement aspects of the project. Something less formal than the official presentation. Mia made a small noise. That might have been a suppressed laugh. I shot her a warning glance before responding. I'd be happy to. My assistant can coordinate with yours for scheduling. Excellent! Daniel smiled warmly. I'll let you get back to your dinner. Looking forward to tomorrow's presentation and our lunch. As he walked away, Mia raised an eyebrow suggestively. Well, that was interesting. It was a professional courtesy, I countered. The Westbrook Foundation is an important potential client. And he couldn't discuss these additional ideas with Nathan because I handled the strategic brief and community engagement aspects of the proposal, I replied primly. And the fact that he's attractive, single, and clearly interested in you is completely irrelevant. Completely, I agreed, fighting a smile. Now can we please change the subject? Mia laughed, refilling our wine glasses. Fine, but when you're naming your first child after that community engagement lunch, remember I called it. The remainder of dinner passed pleasantly, our conversation turning to Mia's new position and the challenges she anticipated. By the time we said our goodbyes, the night had deepened, and a light rain had begun to fall, glistening on the city streets. My driver was waiting at the curb, an indulgence I'd allowed myself after making partner. As we navigated through downtown toward my home, I found myself reflecting on Mia's questions about my personal life. She wasn't wrong. I had deliberately avoided thinking about dating or relationships, focusing instead on rebuilding my professional world after Nathan's betrayal. The truth was, I wasn't sure I was ready to trust someone again. Nathan's deception had been so complete, so calculated, that it had shaken my confidence in my ability to judge character. If I could be so thoroughly deceived by someone I'd lived with for 7 years, how could I trust my instincts with someone new? And yet, there had been something refreshing about my brief interaction with Daniel Westbrook. His appreciation of my strategic contributions to the project, rather than just Nathan's design work, had reminded me that not everyone saw me as merely an appendage to someone else's creativity. When I arrived home, I kicked off my heels and poured a glass of water, checking my phone before heading upstairs. There was a new email from Nathan, sent just 30 minutes earlier. Sophia, I've refined the presentation based on your feedback. The community engagement section is particularly stronger thanks to your insights. I've been thinking about what you said regarding this potentially being a signature project for the firm. You're right, and I want to ensure we present a united front tomorrow. Would you be willing to co-present with me? Your strategic perspective would strengthen our position considerably. Let me know. Nathan. The request surprised me. Since the ownership transfer, Nathan had maintained strict boundaries around client presentations, considering them his domain as chief design architect. This invitation represented a significant shift in his thinking. I typed a careful response. I think co-presenting makes sense for this project. I'll prepare remarks on the strategic and community engagement elements. Let's meet at 9 a.m. to align our presentation styles. His reply came almost immediately. Thank you. This approach will serve the firm and the client best. See you at 9. The next morning, I arrived at Hargrove Design's headquarters 15 minutes early, taking a moment to observe the office in operation before announcing my presence. The space hummed with creative energy, designers and project managers moving purposefully between workstations, large renderings pinned to walls, and 3D models displayed on tables. Nathan had always fostered a collaborative environment, and I had been careful to preserve that culture during the transition. Elena, Nathan's assistant for the past 5 years, spotted me from across the room and approached with a warm smile. Good morning, Ms. Hargrove. Nathan is expecting you in the main conference room. Thank you, Elena. And please, it's still Sophia. She nodded, though I noticed she didn't acknowledge the correction. The staff had developed an interesting dynamic since the ownership change, maintaining formal address with me while remaining casual with Nathan. It was a subtle reminder that while I might own the majority of the firm, Nathan remained its creative heart. The conference room door was open, revealing Nathan arranging presentation materials on the large table. He looked up as I entered, offering a professional nod. Sophia. Thanks for coming early. Of course. I set my briefcase on the table, taking in the meticulously prepared presentation boards. These look excellent. Nathan had always taken pride in his presentation materials, eschewing purely digital. Presentations in favor of tangible renderings and models that clients could touch and examine from different angles. The Westbrook Foundation presentation was no exception. Beautifully executed architectural drawings, a detailed scale model, and material samples arranged in an aesthetically pleasing display. I've structured the presentation to begin with, the design concept and flow through to the technical specifications, Nathan explained. I thought you could take over after the basic design overview to discuss the strategic alignment with the Foundation's mission. Then I'd return for the technical details and construction timeline. That works, I agreed, removing my notes from my briefcase. I've prepared remarks on how the design supports their community engagement goals and sustainability initiatives. Nathan nodded, seeming to hesitate before adding, Your insights on the Foundation's organizational culture were spot on. I wouldn't have considered the collaborative workspace design without your brief. The acknowledgement caught me off guard. Thank you. I spent some time researching their working methods and organizational philosophy. It seemed important to reflect that in the physical space. It was. He gestured to a section of the model showing an innovative open area with modular furniture arrangements. This entire concept evolved from your observations about how their teams interact across departments. It's become central to the design. I studied the model more closely, recognizing how Nathan had translated my abstract organizational insights into physical space. It was a reminder of his genuine talent, not just for creating beautiful buildings, but for understanding how space shapes human interaction. It's excellent work, Nathan. A complicated emotion flickered across his face. We make a good team, professionally speaking. Before I could respond, Elena appeared at the door. The Westbrook Foundation representatives have arrived. They're being shown to the reception area. Thank you, Elena, Nathan replied. We'll be ready for them in 5 minutes. After she departed, Nathan turned back to me. Ready to convince them that Hargrove Designs is their only logical choice? Absolutely, I said, straightening my jacket. Let's show them what we can accomplish together. The presentation proceeded even more smoothly than I had anticipated. Nathan's design overview was compelling and articulate, showcasing not just the aesthetic elements, but the thoughtful intentions behind each choice. When he transitioned to me for the strategic portion, there was an ease to our handoff that suggested years of professional collaboration. I focused my remarks on how the building would function as a physical embodiment of the Westbrook Foundation's mission of community enrichment and educational advancement. The board members leaned forward in their seats as I explained how the IBZ design would facilitate public engagement while maintaining the necessary security and functionality for the Foundation's daily operations. What we're proposing isn't just a headquarters, I concluded, but a community resource that will serve as a visible representation of the Foundation's commitment to accessibility and innovation. Daniel Westbrook nodded appreciatively from his position at the center of the table. You've clearly understood our organization at a fundamental level. When Nathan resumed for the technical portion, he built seamlessly on the points I had established, creating a natural flow that presented us as true partners in the project. The questioning period that followed revealed genuine enthusiasm from the Foundation board, with detailed inquiries suggesting they were already imagining themselves in the space. As the meeting concluded and board members gathered their materials, Daniel approached us. That was exceptional, he said. The integration of design vision with strategic mission alignment is exactly what we've been looking for. Thank you, Nathan replied. It was a true collaboration. Daniel glanced between us with evident curiosity. Well, it's clearly an effective partnership. We'll be making our final decision next week, but I want you both to know how impressed we are with Hargrove Design's approach. After the Westbrook team departed, Nathan and I remained in the conference room, basking in the success of the presentation. That went well, I observed, gathering my notes. Better than well, Nathan agreed. They're going to choose us. I could see it in their eyes when you were talking about the community engagement spaces. When you showed them the rooftop garden concept, I countered. I thought Daniel might sign the contract on the spot. We shared a genuine smile, the first since before our divorce. For a brief moment, we were simply colleagues celebrating a successful presentation, the complicated history between us temporarily suspended. Nathan began carefully returning the presentation materials to their protective folders. I've been thinking about our arrangement, he said without looking up. The division of responsibilities at the firm. Oh? I kept my tone neutral, unsure where this was headed. It's working better than I expected, he admitted. With you handling the business operations and client relationships, I've been able to focus entirely on design. My work has actually improved. I've noticed, I said. The Westbrook design is some of your best work. He nodded, finally meeting my gaze. I was angry when you took control of the firm. I felt like you were punishing me, using my mistake with Rebecca to strip away everything I'd built. I remained silent, allowing him to continue. But these past 6 months have shown me something I didn't expect. He gestured around the conference room, encompassing the firm beyond. Hargrove Designs is stronger with both of us contributing. Our respective strengths. You bring structure and strategy that I never could. And without the pressure of running the business, I'm free to create in ways I couldn't before. I'm glad you see it that way, I said carefully. I never intended to diminish your creative role, only to protect the firm and my investment in it. I understand that now. Nathan straightened, his expression shifting to something more formal. Which is why I'd like to propose a modification to our arrangement. What kind of modification? A more explicit division of responsibilities. Me as creative director with complete autonomy over design decisions, you as CEO with final authority on business matters, and a clearly defined process for projects where those areas intersect, formalized in a new operating agreement. I considered his proposal. It wasn't substantially different from how we'd been functioning already, but the formalization would provide clarity for both us and the staff. That seems reasonable. I'll have my attorney draft something for review. Thank you. Nathan seemed to relax slightly. And I want you to know that I've ended things with Rebecca. Completely. It's been over for months. The personal disclosure was unexpected and unsolicited. That's not really my concern anymore, Nathan. I know, he said quickly. I just thought you should know that I recognize how catastrophically poor my judgment was, professionally and personally. I nodded, unsure how to respond to this partial apology. We should focus on moving forward. The firm has momentum now, and I'd like to maintain that. Agreed. He gathered the last of the presentation materials. I have another client meeting in 20 minutes, but thank you for today. The presentation was stronger with both of us. After Nathan left, I remained in the conference room for a few moments, processing our conversation. There had been a sincerity in his acknowledgement of error that I hadn't expected, though it stopped short of a true apology for the betrayal that had ended our marriage. More interesting was his recognition of how our professional partnership, now stripped of personal entanglements, was actually benefiting Hargrove Designs. It was a perspective I shared, but hadn't expected him to reach, at least not so soon. As I walked through the design studio toward the exit, I noticed the staff watching, me with a mixture of curiosity and respect. My regular presence at the firm had gradually shifted their perception from seeing me as Nathan's ex-wife who took the company to recognizing me as a legitimate leader with distinct contributions to offer. My phone buzzed with a text message from Daniel Westbrook. Lunch next Tuesday at 1 p.m.? My assistant will send details if that works for you. I typed a quick confirmation, noting the small flutter of anticipation the message triggered. Mia's teasing about Daniel's interest came back to me, and I found myself wondering if perhaps she wasn't entirely wrong. As my driver navigated through midday traffic toward my next appointment, I reflected on how dramatically my life had transformed in just 6 months. The anniversary dinner that was meant to end my marriage had instead catalyzed a complete reconstruction of my professional and personal identity. Nathan had intended those divorce papers to diminish me, to relegate me to a footnote in his story as he moved forward with Rebecca. Instead, they had been the key that unlocked a new chapter, one where I was the author, not a supporting character. The ownership transfer papers I had presented in return had secured not just my financial future, but a platform for demonstrating capabilities that had always existed but rarely been acknowledged during our marriage. My phone rang, interrupting these reflections. It was Bennett McAllister. Sophia, he began without preamble. How did the Westbrook presentation go? Exceptionally well, I replied. I think we'll secure the contract. Excellent. That's precisely why I'm calling. The partners are discussing Finch and Blackwell's potential expansion into design law, copyright protection, architectural disputes, construction litigation. It's a growing field, and with your unique position straddling both legal practice and design firm ownership, you'd be the natural choice to head the division. The opportunity was unexpected but intriguing, a chance to further integrate my separate professional worlds. I'd be very interested in exploring that possibility. Good. Let's discuss details when you're back in the office. This could be a significant development for the firm, and for you personally. After ending the call, I gazed out at the city scrolling past my window. 6 months ago, I had been a woman betrayed, facing divorce papers across an anniversary dinner table. Today, I was a law partner potentially heading a new division, majority owner of a thriving design firm, and about to have lunch with a man who seemed to value my mind as much as my appearance. The irony wasn't lost on me. Nathan had sought to end our story with those divorce papers, but they had merely been the beginning of a new narrative, one in which I was defining success on my own terms. And the ownership transfer papers I had left him in return? They hadn't just secured my financial interests in Hargrove Designs. They had transferred ownership of my future back to where it belonged, firmly in my own hands. 6 months passed with remarkable swiftness. Spring blossomed into summer, and summer faded into a crisp autumn. The leaves in the park across from my office turned brilliant shades of gold and crimson, a fitting backdrop for the transformation occurring in my professional and personal life. The Jensen Group acquisition had proven even more profitable for Prescott Development than initially projected. After restructuring the debt and implementing streamlined operations, they had managed to salvage 3 of the 5 hotel properties while selling off the remaining 2 at a substantial profit. I had overseen the entire process, earning not only the promised bonus but also securing Prescott as an exclusive client for Finch & Blackwell, with me as their primary counsel. My partnership at the firm had been finalized in August. My name, now etched on the letterhead, and my office relocated to the corner suite with panoramic views of the city skyline. Bennett had personally hosted a celebration dinner, raising a toast to what he called the most strategic mind in corporate law. Hargrove Designs had weathered the transition in ownership with surprising resilience. After an initial period of tension and adjustment, a new equilibrium had emerged. Nathan maintained his role as chief design architect, focusing exclusively on creative work while I handled the business operations through a management team I had carefully assembled. We communicated primarily through email and scheduled meetings, maintaining professional distance that served us both. The divorce had been finalized without fanfare or further conflict, the terms exactly as outlined in our agreement. Nathan had moved into a downtown loft, notably not designed by him, while I remained in our original home. We had become that rare divorced couple who managed to work together effectively without animosity, though certainly without warmth. As for Rebecca Jensen, she had relocated to Chicago after the collapse of her company, reportedly working for a mid-sized hotel management firm in a significantly reduced capacity. Nathan never mentioned her name, and I never asked if they had maintained their relationship. Some questions were better left unasked. On a particularly vibrant October afternoon, I sat in my office reviewing quarterly reports for Hargrove Designs. The firm was thriving under the new management structure, with profits up 23% and employee satisfaction scores at an all-time high. Nathan's creative work remained exceptional, perhaps even improving, without the distraction of administrative responsibilities. His latest design for a performing arts center had won a prestigious industry award, bringing positive attention to the firm. My assistant Julia knocked lightly before entering with a sleek portfolio. The preliminary designs for the Westbrook Foundation headquarters just arrived from Hargrove Designs, she announced, placing the portfolio on my desk. Nathan Hargrove included a note saying he'd like your feedback before tomorrow's presentation to the client. Thank you, Julia, I replied, opening the portfolio. Inside were exquisite renderings of a building that somehow managed to be both boldly innovative and perfectly harmonious with its surroundings. Nathan had always possessed this gift, seeing possibilities in space that others couldn't imagine. The accompanying notes detailed sustainability features and community integration elements that aligned perfectly with the Westbrook Foundation's mission. Sophia Hargrove, announced the host as I stepped onto the small stage, the spotlight momentarily blinding me as enthusiastic applause filled the hotel ballroom. 300 of the city's most influential business leaders had gathered for the annual Women in Business Gala, and somehow I had been selected as this year's Business Leader of the Year. I smoothed my midnight blue gown and approached the Geyser podium, the weight of the Crystal Award substantial in my hands. Thank you for this incredible honor, I began, my voice steady despite the flutter of nerves in my stomach. When I received the nomination, my first reaction was to check if there had been some administrative error. Gentle laughter rippled through the audience. The past 18 months have been transformative, not just for me personally, but for Hargrove Designs and for my legal practice at Finch & Blackwell. The integration of these seemingly separate worlds has created something entirely new, something I could never have imagined at the beginning of this journey. From my vantage point on stage, I could see Daniel Westbrook at a front table, his expression a mixture of pride and admiration that still had the power to warm me from within. Next to him sat Mia Torres, now head of corporate security at BioNexus Pharmaceuticals, grinning broadly. Bennett McAllister and several partners from the firm occupied another table near the front, and scattered throughout the room were clients and colleagues whose paths had intersected with mine during this remarkable transformation. Conventional wisdom suggests that personal setbacks should remain separate from professional advancement, I continued. But I've learned that our greatest professional evolutions often emerge from our most challenging personal moments. It's in those crucibles that we discover strengths we never knew we possessed. I didn't mention Nathan or our divorce explicitly. That wasn't the story I was here to tell. But the knowing looks from those familiar with my journey acknowledged the unspoken narrative beneath my carefully chosen words. The Design Law Division at Finch & Blackwell was born from the recognition that legal expertise and creative vision are not opposing forces, but complementary strengths. Similarly, the renewal of Hargrove Designs under collaborative leadership has proven that succession can lead to innovation rather than disruption. The past year had seen the Design Law Division grow from a concept to a thriving practice area, with 6 dedicated attorneys and a roster of clients spanning architecture firms, design studios, and creative industry entrepreneurs. Hargrove Designs had expanded its portfolio to include not just commercial and residential projects, but also innovative public spaces that blended functionality with community engagement. Leadership isn't about holding tight to control, I said, thinking of how my relationship with Nathan had evolved from adversaries to respectful colleagues. It's about creating structures where everyone can contribute their unique talents toward a shared vision. As I concluded my remarks and returned to my seat amid renewed applause, I felt a profound sense of completion. The woman who had once sat across from her husband at an anniversary dinner, staring at unexpected divorce papers, would hardly recognize the person I had become, not because the core of who I was had changed, but because circumstances had revealed aspects of myself that had always existed beneath the surface. Later, as the formal program ended and attendees mingled with cocktails and desserts, Daniel found me near the terrace doors. "Congratulations," he said, kissing my cheek. "Though I'm still convinced they should have given you Innovator of the High Year as well." I laughed, taking the champagne flute he offered. 1 award per night seems sufficient. Besides, Patricia Chen absolutely deserved the innovation recognition for her work in sustainable manufacturing. "Ever gracious," he noted, with a smile. "It's part of your charm." "Only part?" I teased, comfortable in the easy rapport we'd developed over the months since that first business lunch had evolved into something more personal. "A small but significant part," Daniel clarified, his gaze warm. "Along with your strategic brilliance, unwavering determination, and remarkable ability to reconstruct something better from challenging circumstances." Before I could respond, I felt a tap on my shoulder and turned to find Bennett approaching with a woman I didn't recognize, elegantly dressed in a crimson suit with an architectural silver necklace that immediately caught my attention. "Sophia, congratulations again," Bennett said. "I'd like to introduce Valerie Zhao, founder of Zhao International Design. Valerie, this is Sophia Hargrove, the partner heading our Design Law Division and majority owner of Hargrove Designs." I extended my hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Zhao. Your Singapore Museum of Innovation project was extraordinary." Surprise flickered across her face. "You're familiar with my work?" "Of course. The cantilever design alone was revolutionary, but the integration of digital interfaces throughout the exhibition spaces truly set new standards." Valerie smiled, clearly pleased. Most lawyers I meet can barely distinguish between contemporary and traditional design aesthetics, let alone specific architectural projects. Sophia isn't most lawyers, Bennett interjected, which is precisely why I thought you two should meet. Valerie is expanding her firm's North American presence and needs counsel who understands both the legal and design implications of international architectural practice. I'd be happy to discuss how our division might assist, I offered. Perhaps we could arrange a meeting next week? I'd like that, Valerie replied. Bennett speaks very highly of your unique perspective bridging legal expertise and design sensibility. As we exchanged contact information, I caught sight of Nathan across the room, deep in conversation with the city's planning director, likely discussing the Performing Arts Center that had recently secured final approval. He looked well, the past year having restored some of the creative energy that had dimmed during our marriage's final months. Nathan must have felt my gaze because he looked up suddenly, meeting my eyes across the crowded room. After a brief hesitation, he raised his glass slightly in acknowledgement. I returned the gesture, a wordless recognition of how far we'd both come since that fateful anniversary dinner. "Everything all right?" Daniel asked, noticing the exchange. "Yes," I said, meaning it completely. Everything is exactly as it should be. Later that evening, as Daniel and I walked along the waterfront near my home, the city lights reflecting on the gentle waves, I found myself reflecting on the unexpected journey of the past 18 months. "Penny for your thoughts," Daniel said, his hand warm around mine despite the cool evening air. "I was just thinking about trajectories," I replied. "How one moment can completely alter your life's direction." "The divorce papers," he guessed, having heard enough of my story to understand its significance. "Yes. Nathan intended them to diminish me, to relegate me to a footnote in his story as he moved forward with Rebecca. Instead, they became the catalyst for everything that followed: the ownership transfer, the partnership, the design law division." Daniel considered this. "It's interesting how often the things meant to hurt us become the foundations for something stronger. Only if we choose to build on them," I noted. There was a moment when I could have simply accepted the terms he offered, walked away with what he deemed fair, and started over in a smaller apartment with a diminished sense of self. "But that wasn't your nature," Daniel observed. "It wasn't," I agreed. Though I'm not sure I fully understood that about myself until I was confronted with those papers across the anniversary dinner table. We had reached a small waterfront plaza where a modern sculpture, one of Nathan's early public installations, ironically, created interesting shadows in the moonlight. Daniel stopped, turning to face me. "I have something to ask you," he said, his expression suddenly serious. "It's not divorce papers or ownership transfers, I promise." My heart quickened as he reached into his jacket pocket, withdrawing a small velvet box. "Daniel, before you say anything," he interrupted gently, "this isn't a traditional proposal. I know 18 months isn't very long, especially given what you've been through. But I also know that when you find someone who sees you completely, who values your strategic mind as much as your compassionate heart, you don't let timing dictate your choices." He opened the box, revealing not an engagement ring but a delicate key fashioned in platinum with a small diamond embedded in its bow. "This is a key to the lakeside property I purchased last month," he explained. "The one we visited that you said felt like a perfect retreat from city life." I stared at the key, momentarily speechless. "I'm not asking you to marry me. Not yet," Daniel continued. "I'm asking if you'd consider building something together, starting with weekends at the lake, seeing if we can create a shared space that belongs to both of us. No pressure, no timeline, just possibility." The thoughtfulness of the gesture, acknowledging my recent journey while offering a path forward, was quintessentially Daniel. He had never pushed for more than I was ready to give, respecting the careful reconstruction of my life after Nathan's betrayal. I would love that, I said simply, accepting the key. Building something together, step by step, sounds perfect. His smile was radiant as he pulled me close. I was hoping you'd say that. Although, I added with a playful smile, from a legal perspective, we should probably draft a clear ownership agreement for the property. Daniel laughed. Always the attorney. Always, I agreed. It's part of my charm. The next morning, still glowing from the evening's events, I arrived at my office to find an unusual delivery waiting on my desk. An architectural model I didn't recognize, accompanied by a handwritten note in Nathan's distinctive script. Sophia, congratulations on your well-deserved recognition last night. This is the model for the Westbrook Foundation Community Annex. Your influence on the firm's direction is evident throughout the design, particularly in the spaces designed for public engagement. I thought you should have the original model as a reminder of what we've managed to build, separately and together. Nathan. I studied the model with appreciation. The Westbrook Foundation headquarters had been our first major collaboration post-divorce, ultimately securing Hargrove Designs a prestigious industry award. This community annex was an extension of that project, a space specifically designed for foundation-supported educational programs and community gatherings. The gesture was significant coming from Nathan, who had always been protective of his original models, considering them tangible expressions of his creative process. That he would gift one to me represented a profound shift in our relationship, an acknowledgement of my contribution to the firm's evolution. My assistant Julia appeared in the doorway. Good morning. I see Mr. Hargrove's gift arrived. Yes, just now, I replied, still examining the model's intricate details. Also, the quarterly reports are ready for your review, the Zhao International. Design meeting has been scheduled for Wednesday at 10 a.m., and Mr. McAllister would like 15 minutes this morning to discuss the Chen manufacturing contract if you're available. Thank you, Julia. I can see Bennett at 9:30. I set the model carefully on the credenza behind my desk, where it would be visible but protected. Could you also send a note to Nathan thanking him for the model? Let him know I appreciate the gesture and the recognition of our collaborative success. As Julia departed, I turned to the window, watching the morning light illuminate the city I had come to see differently over the past 18 months. What had once been merely the backdrop for my married life with Nathan had transformed into the landscape of my professional triumph and personal renewal. My phone rang, Daniel calling to wish me a good morning and confirm our dinner plans for the evening. The conversation was brief but warm, a comfortable check-in that had become part of our daily rhythm. After we disconnected, I opened my laptop to review the quarterly financial reports for Hargrove Designs. The numbers confirmed what I already knew. The firm was thriving under our restructured leadership approach. Design commissions had increased. By 32% year over year, staff retention had improved dramatically, and profit margins had never been stronger. Most significantly, client satisfaction scores had reached an all-time high, with specific praise for the balance of innovative design and practical implementation that had become Hargrove Design's signature approach. I made notes on areas for potential improvement and strategic opportunities for the coming quarters before sending the report back to the management team with my annotations. This rhythm had become familiar, my high-level strategic oversight, complementing Nathan's creative direction. Our professional strengths finally aligned without the complications of our personal relationship. My 9:30 meeting with Bennett evolved from a quick contract discussion into a strategic conversation about expanding the design law division internationally. Valerie Zhao was quite impressed with you last night, he noted as we reviewed the Chen manufacturing agreement. She's already emailed this morning about retaining us for her North American expansion. That's excellent news, I replied. Her firm would be a significant addition to our client roster. More than that, Bennett continued, she mentioned that several members of the International Design Collaborative have been discussing the need for specialized legal counsel. Your division could potentially become the go-to resource for that entire network. The International Design Collaborative represented some of the most innovative architecture and design firms globally, a prestigious alliance that would dramatically expand our practice's reach and influence. That would require additional staffing and expertise in international intellectual property law, I noted, already mentally restructuring the division to accommodate such growth. Which is why I've already spoken with the executive committee about authorizing 3 new attorney positions for your team, Bennett replied with a satisfied smile. They've approved the expansion unanimously. That's remarkable, I said, genuinely surprised by the speed of this development. Thank you for your advocacy, Bennett. No need for thanks. The division has exceeded all projected metrics in its first year. This expansion is simply good business. He paused, studying me with the perceptive gaze that had identified my potential long before others. Though I must say, watching your evolution from promising associate to division head and business owner has been particularly satisfying. It's been quite a journey, I acknowledged. One that began with an unexpected divorce, as I recall, Bennett observed mildly. Interesting how life's greatest challenges often reveal our truest capabilities. I smiled, recognizing the echo of my award speech from the previous evening. Indeed. After Bennett departed, I spent the remainder of the morning developing a preliminary structure for the division's international expansion, identifying potential team members and necessary resources. The work was engaging and forward-looking, focused on building something substantial rather than reacting to loss. At noon, I had a scheduled video conference with Nathan and the Hargrove Designs management team, our monthly strategic alignment meeting that had become an essential component of the firm's successful operation. Nathan appeared on screen first, nodding professionally. Sophia, congratulations again on the award. Well deserved. Thank you, Nathan. And thank you for the model. It was a thoughtful gesture. His expression softened slightly. It seemed appropriate. That project marked a turning point for the firm and for our working relationship. Before we could continue, other team members joined the call, and we shifted smoothly into business discussions. The management structure we had established had proven remarkably effective. Nathan leading all creative and design decisions, me providing strategic direction and business oversight, and our carefully selected management team handling day-to-day operations. The Westbrook Foundation has referred 3 new clients to us this quarter, reported Elena, who had been promoted to Client Relations Director. All cited the community annex as a key factor in their decision to approach Hargrove Designs. That's excellent, I replied. Are we staffed appropriately to handle the additional projects? We'll need to bring on 2 more junior architects, Nathan said. I've identified several promising candidates from the university's architectural program. We continued through the agenda efficiently, addressing staffing needs, ongoing projects, and strategic opportunities. The tension that had characterized our early post-divorce interactions had evolved into professional respect, not warmth exactly, but a productive collaborative rhythm that served the firm well. Near the end of the meeting, Nathan introduced an unexpected topic. I'd like to discuss a potential rebranding for the firm. My attention sharpened. What kind of rebranding? Nothing dramatic, he assured me. But given how the firm has evolved over the past 18 months, I think our brand should reflect the current reality rather than just my historical vision. The management team exchanged glances, clearly uncertain how I would respond to this suggestion. What specifically are you proposing? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Nathan shared his screen, displaying a new logo and company name, Hargrove Strategic Design. The addition of strategic acknowledges the firm's expanded focus beyond pure architectural design, he explained. It recognizes that our competitive advantage now lies in the integration of creative vision with strategic implementation. I studied the proposed branding, surprised not by the suggestion itself, but by the implicit acknowledgement of my contribution to the firm's evolution. "It's a thoughtful update," I said finally. "I support exploring this direction." Relief visibly passed through the management team at my positive response. "I'll have the design team develop a comprehensive rebranding package for review at our next meeting," Nathan concluded. After the call ended, I remained at my desk, contemplating the proposed name change. Hargrove Strategic Design was more than a cosmetic update. It represented Nathan's acceptance of the firm's transformation under our dual leadership. It was, perhaps, the most significant acknowledgement he had offered of the value I had brought to what had once been exclusively his domain. My phone buzzed with a text from Mia. "Lunch? I have news." We met at a small cafe near my office, Mia practically vibrating with excitement as she slid into the seat across from me. "Don't keep me in suspense," I said, smiling at her obvious enthusiasm. "What's the news?" "I'm engaged." She extended her left hand, revealing an elegant emerald ring. "Alex proposed last night after your award ceremony." "Mia, that's wonderful," I exclaimed, genuinely delighted for my friend. She had been dating Alex Chen, BioNexus Pharmaceuticals' chief technology officer, for about a year. "Tell me everything." As Mia recounted the details of the proposal, a surprise dinner at the botanical garden where they'd had their first date, I felt a surge of happiness for her. She had been my steadfast support through the darkest days of my divorce and subsequent professional transformation. He said he knew I was the one when I caught that corporate spy trying to access the research database, she added with a laugh. Apparently, watching me tackle someone while wearing heels and a business suit was the moment he fell in love. "That's actually incredibly romantic," I observed. "He fell in love with your competence and courage, not just your appearance." "Speaking of romance," Mia segued smoothly, "what about you and Daniel? Any developments I should know about?" I hesitated, then decided to share the previous night's events. "He gave me a key last night, to the lakeside property." Mia's eyes widened. "That's significant." "It is," I agreed. He was very clear that it wasn't a traditional proposal, more an invitation to begin building something together, starting with shared weekends away from the city. "That's so perfectly Daniel," Mia observed. "Thoughtful, measured, respecting your journey." "Exactly." I smiled, running my finger along the edge of my water glass. "And exactly what I need right now." "And Nathan?" she asked carefully. "How are things on that front?" "Professional," I replied. "He sent me a model of the Westbrook Foundation Community Annex this morning as congratulations for the award. And during our management meeting, he proposed adding strategic to the firm's name, Hargrove Strategic Design." Mia whistled softly. "That's practically a declaration of respect coming from Nathan." "It is," I acknowledged. "I think we've both grown since the divorce, found our separate strengths, and learned to collaborate without the complications of our marriage." "Would you have discovered those strengths without the divorce?" Mia wondered. "Without those papers at your anniversary dinner?" I considered the question seriously. "Probably not. Our marriage had settled into patterns that neither challenged nor nurtured my potential. Nathan saw me as supporting his vision rather than having my own. And now he literally wants to put your strategic contribution into the company name," Mia noted with satisfaction. "That's quite an evolution." "For both of us," I agreed. "Though I certainly wouldn't recommend divorce papers at an anniversary dinner as a personal growth strategy." "I don't know," Mia teased. "Seems to have worked out pretty well for you in the end." After lunch, I returned to my office to find Julia organizing a stack of portfolio materials for the upcoming Zhao International Design meeting. "These just arrived from Hargrove Designs," she explained. "Sample projects demonstrating the firm's approach to international design challenges as you requested." "Perfect. Thank you." Also, Mr. Westbrook called. He's finalized the lakeside dinner reservations for tonight and will pick you up at 7. I smiled at the thought of the evening ahead. Dinner overlooking the lake, perhaps a walk along the shore afterward. Daniel had mentioned wanting to discuss potential renovation ideas for the lakeside property, a conversation that now carried new significance given the key nestled in my purse. The remainder of the afternoon passed quickly, filled with client calls and preparations for the division's international expansion. By the time I left the office, the sun was setting, painting the city in warm golden light that seemed to mirror my internal sense of satisfaction. My driver delivered me home with enough time to change for dinner. I selected a simple burgundy dress that Daniel had once admired, adding my grandmother's pearl earrings, the only jewelry I had kept from my marriage to Nathan, as they had been gifted to me by my family rather than by him. As I waited for Daniel to arrive, I found myself drawn to my home office, where the envelope containing Nathan's original divorce papers remained filed in a cabinet, a reminder of where this journey had begun 18 months ago. I removed the envelope, opening it to examine the documents inside. The legal language was cold and impersonal, outlining the dissolution of our 7-year marriage in sterile terms that had once felt like daggers to my heart. Now they seemed merely artifacts from a previous chapter, significant, but no longer painful. Beside them in the file was a copy of the ownership transfer papers I had presented in return, my strategic countermove that had altered the trajectory of both our lives. Looking at them now, I could appreciate the precision of my response. Not with vindictive satisfaction, but with recognition of my own capabilities. The doorbell rang, announcing Daniel's arrival. I returned the papers to their folder and the folder to its cabinet, symbolically closing that chapter before opening my door to the next. Daniel stood on my doorstep, handsome in a tailored gray suit, holding a small bouquet of autumn flowers. "You look beautiful," he said, his smile warming me more than the flowers ever could. "Thank you," I replied, accepting both the compliment and the bouquet. "Let me put these in water before we go." As I arranged the flowers in a crystal vase, ironically, a wedding gift from a colleague, Daniel wandered into my living room, stopping before the architectural model Nathan had gifted me that morning, which I had brought home to display properly. "Is this new?" he asked, studying the intricate details of the community annex design. "It arrived today," I explained, joining him. "A congratulatory gift from Nathan." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "That's unexpectedly generous of him. It represents a project we collaborated on successfully," I said. "I think it's his way of acknowledging that the firm is stronger with both our contributions." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "Growth often comes from unexpected places." "Indeed it does," I agreed, thinking of how my own growth had sprung from what had initially seemed like devastating loss. "And speaking of growth, I hear you have renovation ideas for the lakeside property?" His expression brightened. "Several, actually. I was thinking about converting the boathouse into a workspace, somewhere you could retreat to work on your most complex legal strategies with the lake as inspiration." "You've given thought to my work habits," I observed, touched by his consideration. "Of course," he replied simply. "They're part of who you are, part of what I admire about you." As we left for dinner, I found myself reflecting on the contrast between Daniel's approach to our relationship and Nathan's during our marriage. Where Nathan had seen my career as separate from our shared life, Daniel integrated it into his understanding of me, creating space for my professional identity within our personal connection. The lakeside restaurant was intimate and elegant, with panoramic windows offering views of moonlight reflecting on the water. As we settled at our table, I found myself feeling a profound sense of rightness, not just about Daniel and our evolving relationship, but about the entire path that had led me to this moment. "A toast," Daniel proposed, raising his wine glass, "to unexpected journeys and the strength they reveal." I raised my glass to meet his. To building something new, together. Later that evening, as we walked along the lakeshore near the property that now symbolized our shared future, Daniel asked a question that caught me by surprise. "Do you ever regret it? The way everything unfolded with Nathan and the firm?" I considered carefully before answering. I regret the pain and betrayal, certainly. No one wants to discover their spouse has been unfaithful or deceptive. I paused, watching the gentle waves lapping at the shore. But I don't regret where the journey has led. I don't regret discovering my own capabilities or building a professional identity that fully expresses my potential. And I certainly don't regret the circumstances that ultimately led me to you. Daniel squeezed my hand gently. For what it's worth, I'm grateful for the path that brought you here, difficult as it must have been. As am I replied, meaning it completely. The key he had given me felt warm in my pocket, a tangible symbol of possibility rather than possession. Unlike the ownership transfer papers I had presented to Nathan, which had been about securing what was rightfully mine, this key represented an invitation to create something neither of us could build alone. 18 months after receiving divorce papers at my anniversary dinner, I had discovered that the most meaningful ownership wasn't about control or retribution, but about claiming the authority to write my own story, professionally, personally, and in partnership with someone who saw my true value. The lake house lights glowed softly in the distance, beckoning us toward a future built on mutual respect and shared vision, a future entirely of our own design. The morning sunshine streamed through the lake house windows, casting golden patterns across the antique wooden floor. 1 year had passed since Daniel gave me the key to this sanctuary, and in that time, it had transformed from a beautiful, but impersonal property into our shared haven. The renovation had been a joint project, Daniel overseeing structural changes while I directed the interior design, blending our aesthetics into something that reflected both of us. I stood at the kitchen island, coffee in hand, reviewing notes for an international conference call scheduled for later that morning. Even on weekend retreats, some work was inevitable, but I had learned to balance it with genuine downtime, a skill that had eluded me during my marriage to Nathan. "You're up early," Daniel observed, entering the kitchen in running clothes, slightly breathless from his morning jog around the lake. "Conference call?" "The Singapore team needs guidance." "On the Jang Collective contract," I confirmed. "Time zones make Monday morning our only viable option." He poured himself water, leaning against the counter. "Will it take long?" "I was hoping we might take the boat out later." "Shouldn't be more than an hour," I promised. "Plenty of time." "For boating afterward." Daniel smiled, dropping a kiss on my forehead before heading to shower. Our rhythm had developed naturally over the past year, respectful of each other's work commitments while prioritizing quality time together. It was a balance I had never quite achieved with Nathan, whose creative schedule had often dominated our shared life. My phone chimed with a text from Julia. "Ms. Zhao's team sent revised contract language for your review before Monday's signing, attached for your convenience." Even on weekends, Julia's efficiency remained impressive. I had promoted her to executive assistant 6 months ago, with a substantial salary increase that reflected her growing responsibilities as my professional portfolio expanded. I reviewed the contract amendments quickly, finding them consistent with our previous discussions. Zhao International Design had become one of our division's most significant clients, with Valerie Zhao herself often calling me directly for strategic advice on complex international projects. My laptop chimed with an incoming video call, not from Singapore as expected, but from Nathan. I accepted with mild surprise. "Sophia," he greeted me, his home office visible in the background. "I apologize for the weekend intrusion, but something's come up that couldn't wait until Monday." "No problem," I replied, noting that he looked unusually energized. "What's happening?" The Westbrook Foundation Community Annex has been shortlisted for the International Design Excellence Award, he announced, unable to contain a smile. The committee specifically cited the integration of architectural vision with community engagement strategy as the distinguishing factor. "Nathan, that's wonderful news," I said sincerely. The community annex had become Hargrove Strategic Design's signature project, the physical embodiment of our new collaborative approach. "When will they announce the finalists?" 3 weeks from now, with the award ceremony in Barcelona the following month. He hesitated slightly. "The committee has requested that both of us attend the ceremony as co-representatives of the firm." This was unexpected. While Nathan and I had established a productive professional relationship, we had carefully maintained our separate spheres. Joint public appearances were rare and generally limited to client presentations. "Both of us?" I confirmed. "The nomination specifically recognizes the unique partnership structure that produced the design," Nathan explained. "They're interested in the collaborative model as much as the building itself." I considered the implications. The International Design Excellence Award was among the most prestigious in the industry. Winning would significantly elevate Hargrove Strategic Design's global profile. My personal discomfort with spending several days in Nathan's company seemed trivial compared to the professional benefits. "Of course I'll attend," I said decisively. "The firm deserves this recognition." Relief flickered across Nathan's face. "Thank you. I'll have Elena coordinate the travel arrangements with Julia." He paused before adding, "This nomination validates everything we've built over the past 2 years, Sophia. Not just the annex itself, but the entire restructured approach to the firm." "It does," I agreed, though I doubt either of us would have chosen this path voluntarily. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Life rarely consults us before delivering its most transformative lessons. Another pause. "Are you at the lake house? The background looks different from your city apartment." "Yes," I confirmed, slightly uncomfortable with the personal inquiry. "I have a conference call with Singapore in 20 minutes, then the rest of the weekend off." Nathan nodded. "I won't keep you then. I'll have Elena send the award ceremony details on Monday." After disconnecting, I sat quietly, processing this development. The award nomination represented professional validation of everything we had built from the ashes of our marriage, the transformation of personal loss into creative and business innovation. Daniel returned from his shower, immediately sensing my contemplative mood. "Everything okay? You look deep in thought." I shared Nathan's news, including the request for our joint attendance at the Barcelona ceremony. "That's incredible recognition," Daniel observed, making himself coffee. "Though I imagine attending an international event with your ex-husband wasn't on your wish list." "It's a professional obligation," I replied. "The firm's reputation will benefit significantly." Daniel studied me with the perceptive gaze that had become so familiar. "And personally? How do you feel about spending several days with Nathan in a celebratory environment?" It was a fair question, one I had been asking myself. Surprisingly, neutral, I realized aloud. 2 years ago, it would have been emotionally fraught. Now it feels like a business trip with a respected colleague who happens to share some complicated history. "You've come a long way," Daniel noted, not without pride. "We both have," I acknowledged. "Nathan has grown too in his own way. He's learned to value strategic thinking alongside creative vision. The partnership structure forced that evolution." Before we could discuss further, my laptop chimed again, the Singapore team connecting for our scheduled call. Daniel withdrew, tactfully to the lake house's small library, giving me privacy for the business discussion. The call proceeded efficiently, resolving the contract questions with minimal debate. As I closed my laptop afterward, I found myself reflecting on the stark contrast between my current contentment and the upheaval of 2 years ago. The divorce papers Nathan had delivered at our anniversary dinner had seemed catastrophic at the time, the end of everything familiar and secure. Instead, they had become the catalyst for reconstruction, for building something far more aligned with my true capabilities. I joined Daniel in the library, where he was reviewing architectural journals, research for his foundation's latest community initiative. "Call went well?" he asked, setting aside his reading. "Very," I confirmed. "The contract should be finalized Monday without further complications." "Perfect timing for our boat excursion, then," he said, standing and extending his hand. "The lake awaits, counselor." Hours later, as our small sailboat glided across the serene water, I felt the last of the week's tension dissipate. Daniel handled the boat with quiet confidence, having sailed since childhood. I had proven an eager student, gradually taking on more responsibility with each outing. "Take the tiller," Daniel suggested, moving aside to let me steer. "Aim for the far cove. We can anchor there for lunch." As I guided the boat through the gentle waves, I found myself contemplating the Barcelona trip and what it represented. Professional recognition, certainly, but also a symbolic closing of the circle that had begun with those divorce papers. Nathan and I had moved from adversaries to reluctant partners to something approaching genuine collaborators. The award nomination acknowledged that evolution publicly. "You're thinking about Barcelona again," Daniel observed, uncannily attuned to my thought patterns. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who's studied your contemplative expressions for the past year," he replied with a smile. "What specific aspect is occupying your thoughts?" I considered before answering. "The symbolism, I suppose. Standing beside Nathan to accept recognition for something we built after our marriage ended, something neither of us could have created alone." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "Life rarely follows linear narratives. Sometimes the ending becomes a different kind of beginning." "Exactly," I agreed, impressed as always by his emotional insight. Though I'll admit I never imagined attending a gala event with my ex-husband while in a committed relationship with someone else. "Speaking of commitments," Daniel said, his tone shifting slightly as he reached into the small cooler we had brought aboard. Instead of retrieving our planned lunch, he withdrew a slim velvet box. My breath caught. Unlike the key presentation a year ago, the nature of this box was unmistakable. "I had planned something more elaborate," he admitted, "but this moment feels right." He opened the box, revealing an elegant, emerald-cut diamond set in platinum. "Sophia, this past year has shown me that what we're building together is everything I've been searching for. Will you marry me?" The question hung in the air between us, weighted with significance beyond its simple phrasing. For me, marriage had become a complex proposition, no longer the straightforward societal expectation, but a deliberate choice, requiring careful consideration. "This isn't about replacing what you lost," Daniel continued, reading my hesitation accurately. "It's about creating something entirely new, a partnership based on mutual respect and genuine understanding of each other's strengths." I studied him. This thoughtful man who had never once asked me to diminish myself for his comfort, who had created space for all aspects of my identity within our relationship. "Yes," I said simply. "I would love to marry you." His smile was radiant as he slipped the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly, like his presence in my life. Neither overwhelming nor underwhelming, but precisely right. As we sailed back toward the lake house later that afternoon, my newly adorned hand resting comfortably on the tiller, I found myself reflecting on the strange symmetry of life. The anniversary dinner where Nathan had delivered divorce papers had seemed like an ending. In reality, it had been the beginning of a journey toward a more authentic version of myself, professionally confident, personally resilient, and now engaged to someone who valued me completely. My phone chimed with an incoming message from Mia. Lunch Tuesday to discuss wedding plans? Alex tells me Daniel picked up the ring last week. Did it happen yet? I laughed, showing Daniel the text. News travels fast in our circle. Alex has never been good at keeping secrets, he acknowledged with a chuckle. Though in fairness, I did ask his advice on jewelers. I typed a quick response. Yes to Tuesday lunch. Yes to the proposal. Full details in person. Mia's immediate reply consisted solely of celebratory emojis, making both of us laugh. As the lake house came into view, its renovated silhouette perfectly complementing the natural landscape, I felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with external validation or professional accomplishments. The journey that had begun with those devastating divorce papers had led me here, not just to career success or a new relationship, but to a fuller understanding of my own capacity for resilience and growth. "What are you thinking?" Daniel asked as we secured the boat to the private dock. "That endings and beginnings are often indistinguishable in the moment," I replied. "It's only with distance that we recognize the turning points in our lives." He helped me onto the dock, his hand warm and steady. "And this moment? Beginning or ending?" I looked at the ring glinting in the late afternoon sunlight, then at the lake house we had transformed together, and finally at Daniel himself. Patient, perceptive, partnership incarnate. "Neither," I said with certainty. "This is a continuation, another chapter in a story that keeps revealing itself in unexpected ways." As we walked hand in hand toward the house, I found myself looking forward to Barcelona with newfound clarity. Standing beside Nathan to accept recognition for our professional achievements would be neither awkward nor triumphant, but simply appropriate, acknowledgement of a complex journey that had transformed us both. The divorce papers he had delivered, and the ownership transfer papers I had returned, had initiated that transformation. Now, 2 years later, with an engagement ring on my finger and a prestigious award nomination for our collaborative work, the circle was complete. Not in the sense of ending, but in the sense of wholeness. Each experience contributing to a life richer and more nuanced than I could have imagined on that fateful anniversary night. Daniel squeezed my hand as if reading my thoughts. "Full circle?" he asked. "Full circle," I confirmed, and ready for whatever comes next. Barcelona in autumn was magical. The Mediterranean air crisp but not cold, the tourist crowds thin to manageable levels, and the architecture of the city resplendent under clear blue skies. From my hotel suite balcony, I could see the distinctive spires of Sagrada Familia in the distance, its perpetual construction a fitting metaphor for continuous evolution and patient creation. "The car will be here in 30 minutes, Daniel said, joining me on the balcony with coffee. He had insisted on accompanying me to Barcelona, though he would attend a separate philanthropy conference during the award ceremony. "Nervous about tonight?" I considered the question seriously. Not nervous exactly, perhaps contemplative. The International Design Excellence Awards ceremony would take place that evening at a historic palace in the Gothic Quarter. Nathan and I would represent Hargrove Strategic Design together, potentially accepting the industry's highest honor for the Westbrook Foundation Community Annex. The project that had begun amid the ashes of our divorce had reached its pinnacle of recognition. "Contemplative is good," Daniel observed, his hand finding mine, fingers reflexively touching the engagement ring. "This is a significant milestone in your professional journey." "And personal," I added. "Standing beside Nathan to accept this award represents a completion of sorts, acknowledgement that something valuable emerged from difficult circumstances." Daniel studied me with the perceptive gaze I had come to cherish. "You've both created something remarkable from what could have been merely bitter endings." I sipped my coffee, savoring the moment of calm before the day's events began. The past week had been a whirlwind of preparations, final suit fittings, speech rehearsals with Nathan via video call, and endless logistics coordinated between Julia and Elena. Nathan had arrived in Barcelona 2 days earlier for preliminary interviews and jury meetings. Our interactions had been cordial but limited, each of us conscious of maintaining professional boundaries while presenting a unified front for the firm. "What time is your conference panel?" I asked Daniel, turning the conversation away from the awards. 11:30, he replied. Global philanthropy and urban development, essentially discussing how foundations like Westbrook can partner with cities to create meaningful public spaces. Perfect timing to mention your fiancé potentially winning an award for designing. Exactly that, I teased. He laughed. I might have already worked that reference into my speaking notes. After finishing our coffee, we prepared for our separate days. I selected a tailored navy pantsuit for the morning meetings, saving the emerald gown for the evening ceremony. Daniel kissed me goodbye at the door, his conference materials tucked under one arm. "Good luck today," he said. "I'll see you back here before the ceremony." The car arrived precisely on time, the driver navigating Barcelona's narrow streets with practiced ease. We were headed to a breakfast meeting with the award committee's chairperson, a courtesy extended to all finalists. Before the evening's announcements, the restaurant occupied the ground floor of a modernist building, its interior a harmonious blend of traditional Catalan elements and contemporary design. Nathan was already seated at a corner table, deep in conversation with Isabelle Moreau, the renowned French architect who chaired this year's awards committee. He stood as I approached, his greeting polite but warm. "Sophia, good morning." Isabelle and I were just discussing the evolution of our firm's approach over the past 2 years. "A fascinating transformation," Isabelle remarked as I joined them. "From a traditional architecture studio to a truly integrated design and strategy firm. Quite revolutionary for your industry." "Necessity drove innovation," I replied diplomatically, accepting the coffee the waiter poured. "We discovered complementary strengths through unexpected circumstances." Nathan's expression flickered briefly with recognition of the understatement. Our unexpected circumstances had included divorce papers at an anniversary dinner and ownership. Transfer documents delivered in response, hardly the typical catalyst for business innovation. Breakfast proceeded pleasantly, with Isabelle sharing insights about the deliberation process without revealing the awards outcomes. "The committee was particularly struck by how your building embodies its purpose," she noted. "The community engagement isn't merely accommodated by the design, it's expressed through it." "That integration was our primary goal," Nathan explained. "The structure needed to physically manifest the Westbrook Foundation's mission of accessibility and connection, while remaining functionally efficient and financially sustainable," I added. "The balance between aspirational design and practical implementation was critical." Isabelle nodded approvingly. "That balance is precisely what elevated your project above other submissions. Many firms create beautiful buildings. Few create beautiful buildings that so completely serve their intended purpose while remaining on budget." After breakfast, Nathan and I walked together toward our next appointment, a short interview with an international architecture journal. The morning sunlight illuminated Barcelona's distinctive buildings, creating dramatic shadows and highlighting intricate details. Isabelle seemed impressed, I observed, breaking our momentary silence. "She did," Nathan agreed, though committee chairs are typically diplomatic with all finalists. "True, but her specific observations about integration of form and function suggest genuine appreciation." Nathan nodded thoughtfully. "The annex is the most successful implementation of our new approach. The design truly is stronger for having both our contributions." The admission came easily, without the reluctance that might have characterized similar conversations a year earlier. Time had softened the sharp edges of our professional rivalry, replacing competition with mutual respect. "Whatever happens, tonight," I said as we approached the Journal's offices. The nomination itself validates what we've built together. Professionally speaking. Professionally speaking, he echoed with the ghost of a smile. His gaze dropped briefly to my engagement ring, a detail he had noticed immediately upon our first meeting in Barcelona, but had not directly acknowledged until now. Daniel has excellent taste. He does, I agreed simply. I'm glad, Nathan said after a brief hesitation, that you found someone who recognizes your value, professionally and personally. The moment of genuine goodwill hung between us, not quite friendship, but something approaching peace. Then, by tacit agreement, we shifted back to business mode as we entered the building for our interview. The remainder of the day passed in a blur of professional obligations. The Journal interview followed by a tour of the Barcelona Architecture Institute, then a luncheon with other award finalists. Throughout these events, Nathan and I presented a unified front, complementing each other's responses and demonstrating the collaborative approach that had earned us the nomination. By late afternoon, I returned to the hotel for a brief respite before preparing for the evening ceremony. Daniel was already there, changing from his conference attire into a tuxedo that complemented the emerald gown hanging in our closet. "How were the meetings?" he asked as I slipped off my shoes with a grateful sigh. "Promising," I replied. The committee chair seemed genuinely impressed with our integration of design and strategy. As she should be," Daniel noted, adjusting his cufflinks. "The annex is remarkable." I studied him fondly. Unlike Nathan, who had often viewed my professional accomplishments as separate from our relationship, Daniel had been enthusiastically supportive of my role in the award-nominated project. He had visited the annex multiple times, understanding both its architectural significance and its importance to my professional evolution. "How was your panel?" I asked, unzipping my suit jacket. "Productive. Several foundations expressed interest in the community-centered development model Westbrook has pioneered." He smiled. "I may have mentioned that my fiancé's firm deserves substantial credit for translating that vision into physical reality." "Shameless promotion," I teased. "Merely accurate information," he countered with a grin. As I prepared for the ceremony, applying makeup and styling my hair into an elegant updo, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had led to this moment. The divorce papers Nathan had delivered at our anniversary dinner had seemed catastrophic, the end of everything secure and familiar. Instead, they had become the catalyst for profound transformation, forcing me to assert my value and claim my rightful place professionally. The ownership transfer papers I had presented in return had similarly transformed Nathan, compelling him to recognize my strategic contributions and ultimately leading to our unique partnership structure. Neither of us would have chosen this path, yet it had led to greater success than our marriage had ever produced. The emerald gown, selected to complement both my coloring and Daniel's presence, flowed elegantly as Daniel zipped it for me. The color reminded me of renewal, of growth emerging from difficult circumstances. "You look stunning," Daniel said, his expression reflecting genuine appreciation. "Regardless of the award outcome, you've already won." I kissed him lightly, careful not to smudge my lipstick. "I know, in all the ways that truly matter." The historic palace hosting the awards ceremony glowed with subtle lighting, its medieval architecture providing a dramatic backdrop for the gathering of international design luminaries. Nathan met us at the entrance, impeccable in his tuxedo, extending a polite greeting to Daniel. "Impressive venue," Daniel remarked, his hand resting lightly at the small of my back. "The committee has excellent taste," Nathan agreed. "The juxtaposition of ancient structure with contemporary design celebration is quite fitting." We made our way through the crowded reception, accepting congratulations from colleagues and competitors alike. The Westbrook Foundation community annex had generated significant industry buzz, with many considering it the favorite to win the evening's highest honor. As we reached our assigned table near the front, I was struck by the strange symmetry of the moment. Seated between my ex-husband and my fiancé, representing the past and future of my personal life while celebrating the professional present we had created together. The ceremony began with the expected formalities: welcome speeches, acknowledgments of sponsors, and presentations of minor category awards. Finally, the moment arrived for the announcement of the Excellence in Civic Architecture Award, the category for which our annex had been nominated. Isabel Moreau approached the podium, opening a sealed envelope with theatrical deliberation. "The jury was unanimous in selecting this year's winner," she announced. "A project that seamlessly integrates innovative design with community purpose, created through a unique collaborative approach that itself represents innovation in architectural practice." My hand found Daniel's under the table, fingers tightening as anticipation built. The International Design Excellence Award for Civic Architecture goes to Hargrove Strategic Design for the Westbrook Foundation Community Annex. The room erupted in applause as spotlights found our table. Nathan and I exchanged brief glances before rising together, making our way to the stage with practiced dignity. The Crystal Award gleamed under the lights as Isabel presented it to us, a shared achievement physically manifested. Nathan gestured for me to speak first, an unexpected courtesy that reflected how far we had come. I stepped to the microphone, the prepared remarks clear in my mind. "This award recognizes not just a building, but a process," I began. "The Westbrook Foundation Community Annex emerged from a fundamental belief that design must serve human connection and community engagement. Its success represents the integration of creative vision with strategic purpose, a collaboration that has defined Hargrove Strategic Design's evolution." I stepped back, allowing Nathan to take his turn. At the microphone. "Great architecture has always balanced beauty with function, inspiration with practicality," he said. "The Community Annex achieves this balance through the partnership structure that now defines our firm, recognizing that the most powerful design solutions emerge when creative vision and strategic thinking are equally valued and integrated." His acknowledgement of our partnership, publicly before the entire industry, represented the final validation of the professional relationship we had painstakingly constructed from the ruins of our marriage. As we returned to our table, award in hand, I felt a profound sense of completion. The divorce papers Nathan had delivered at our anniversary dinner and the ownership transfer papers I had returned had initiated a journey neither of us could have anticipated, one that had ultimately benefited us both, professionally and personally. Later that evening, as Daniel and I strolled along Barcelona's waterfront, the distant sounds of celebration fading behind us, I found myself profoundly content. The award was secure in our hotel suite, tangible recognition of professional achievement. More meaningful, however, was the personal growth it represented, the capacity to transform endings into beginnings, obstacles into opportunities, betrayal into renewal. "Happy?" Daniel asked simply. "Completely," I replied, meaning it entirely. Not because of the award, though that's certainly gratifying. "Because of what it represents," he suggested, understanding as always. "Exactly." I stopped, turning, to face the Mediterranean, its dark waters reflecting scattered lights. 2 years ago, those divorce papers seemed like the end of everything. Instead, they were the catalyst for discovering my true capabilities and ultimately building something more authentic, professionally and personally. Daniel's arm encircled my waist. From divorce papers at an anniversary dinner to an international design award and a new engagement. Quite a journey. With unexpected guides along the way, I acknowledged. Nathan's betrayal forced me to assert my value. The ownership transfer papers I left him in return forced us both to evolve. "And here we are," Daniel said, gesturing, "to the beautiful city around us, ready for whatever comes next." As we continued our walk along the waterfront, Barcelona's distinctive architecture illuminated against the night sky, I reflected on life's strange symmetry. The papers Nathan had delivered and the papers I had returned had created the foundation for everything that followed. Ownership transfer in its most profound sense, returning to each of us the authority to write our own stories. I had claimed ownership not just of Hargrove's strategic design, but of my professional identity and personal future. Nathan had found creative renewal through focusing on his genuine strengths. And together, we had built something neither could have created alone, a partnership based on mutual respect rather than romantic attachment. The journey that had begun with papers exchanged across an anniversary dinner table had culminated here in Barcelona with international recognition and the promise of new beginnings. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I would face them with the confidence born of having already transformed my greatest disappointment into unexpected triumph. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.